Welcome to Building Better Communities by Bob Hart. I'm Bob Hart, your host. Today I'm excited because I've invited Mr. Dick Ziman, who's a very dear friend and a mentor of mine, to come be one of our inaugural guests. And Dick, you've had an unbelievable storied career in Los Angeles, moved here as a young man from Pennsylvania, and went to law school, and then converted your career into real estate as a founder of several different companies. Your first was public company was Arden, and then Rexford. And in the last several years, as chairman of Rexford, you've also been directing over a long period of time, but particularly in the last number of 10 years or more, toward a lot of philanthropic efforts, including the Gilbert Foundation, which I believe you're the vice chair of. Chair of. Okay, sorry about that. And the list is very long of all the things you've done. You've been very helpful to my alma mater at UCLA, founding the Ziman Center there and really putting UCLA on the map in the real estate area, and so many really great things. So I'm excited to have you here today, and I wanted to ask you some different questions and see where this conversation goes. So what are some of the career highlights you've had? I've mentioned Arden, I've mentioned Rexford. Talk a little bit about your career.
Well, my career really began, Bob, when I quit dental school the second day at USC.
Oh my God, I didn't know that you were in dental school.
I was actually 20 years old. I got accepted very young. USC at the time may still have the finest dental school in the country.
They do. I think it focuses a lot on international students too.
And at the time there were 20 applicants for every seat, and believe it or not, a Jewish quota of 7.
Quota back then.
A quota back then.
This is in the
1962.
62.
Of course, obviously, it no longer has such a thing. And the only reason I went to USC, quite honestly, was I heard that they gave favoritism to their own undergraduates. Therefore, I enrolled as an undergraduate at USC and had the time of my life.
Did you want to be a dentist, or were you encouraged by family?
No, I wanted to be a dentist. I actually wanted to be a dentist.
I could see that, Dick.
And so for my first 2 years at USC, I had 58 units of science and 3 units of history. And I applied for this special application of a 2-4 program as opposed to a 4-3 program, which would save a year in school, and I got accepted. So
to the 4-3.
The 2-4 program.
Oh, the 2-4.
So after my sophomore year, my second year at USC, I went off to dental school. I went in and bought my smock, my white smock, and my little tools of trade, and went off to dental school and lasted a whole day and a half. And at 11,
that long.
And at 11:30 on the second day, I got up in the middle of the class, walked down the stairs, walked over to the dean's office, and resigned from class and went over to my old fraternity and said, "I'm back."
What fraternity were you in?
I was a SAMI, Sigma Alpha Nu.
Okay.
And USC as undergraduate was a lot of fun. It was a good school, and there was only one problem. At the time, this thing called Vietnam was in the background.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it went from the background to the middle ground, and there was a little bit concerned. And they were giving deferments for graduate school. And I was the only thing I could graduate in time because I had taken all these science classes. I actually, at one time, thought about going to medical school, but I put that out of my mind. And so the only thing I could get out in time, because I had to go back and take a bunch of mandatory freshman classes that I never took, was history. And so I graduated with a degree in history, but Vietnam was there and they were giving graduate deferments. My roommate was going to go to law school, so I ran down, took the LSAT, and I applied to 6 law schools.
You didn't prep for it?
I took, some class, but it was a stupid class. I can't remember where it was. It was here in LA. But anyway, I took the LSAT, applied to SC, UCLA, Bolt, which is now called Berkeley, no longer Bolt, Hastings, and one other school, and got accepted to them all, and accepted UCLA Law School.
Very good.
And my immigrant father, who barely got out of high school, because he started first grade at the age of 13,
Wow.
But he did graduate with 35 full football scholarships.
Really?
Yeah, so my father, who was a furniture manufacturer,
In
said,
Pennsylvania?
here.
Oh, here. He moved the business here.
Yeah, he was in business here. And he said to me, you can't go to UCLA. UCLA's 10 years old. They have no alumni. They have no judges. You go to law school to get somewhat of an education, but you go to...
the law school was just started. Okay. Yeah.
So he conned me, and I went to USC Law School, which was a very interesting experience. And when I graduated law school, I was then reclassified 1A and got a notice to report for physical.
How did that happen?
Because Vietnam, we had 500,000 soldiers over there, and they had to fill, and I was in draft board 98, and they hadn't filled their quota since 1945.
So even though you were already admitted to graduate school?
No, I was finished with graduate school. They
You were finished. This happened.
They gave me the deferment all the way through.
65?
64. I graduated in 1967.
Okay.
So, but enough about that. It's just, but you can say when you track back, what really were the twists, the streets, the road that I chose to go down. And one was quitting dental school. The second thing was practicing law because I wanted to be a litigator. I really had a tough time getting a job because I was classified 1A, but Loeb & Loeb, a very prestigious law firm sitting on 5 floors right above us, gave me an offer. And they offered me a job for $500 a month after 7 years.
A month?
A month. $6,000 a year. But
Wow.
it was a great experience. It was an old line downtown firm, and I went to work in the litigation department, and it wasn't fun, so I complained, and they hooked me up with a lawyer by the name of Frank Feeder, who actually became
Is that Phil Feeder's
serious
dad?
mentor. Phil Feeder's dad.
Wow.
A brilliant, brilliant lawyer, without a doubt, from El Paso, Texas, of all places. Yale undergraduate, Harvard Law School, or vice versa, I can't remember. A brilliant guy. And he had a little bit of real estate experience, but there was no real estate practice in the firm. And he had a real estate deal. He was leaving on the QE2 for London, and he said, here, take care of this deal. And I didn't know I never had a real estate class, except one, just about entitlements.
Did they even teach much real estate
They
classes?
didn't teach
They
much
didn't teach much of that
No,
then.
no, it wasn't at all. There wasn't
It
real
wasn't the
estate.
specialty it is today.
Not a specialty. In fact, in most law firms, if you were a real estate lawyer, you were a part of the Department of Probate, Estates, and Taxes. You weren't even a recognized sector, except for perhaps New York at the time. So I did 2 real estate transactions, didn't really understand what I was doing, quite honestly, but got them closed, and a lot of help from the lawyers across the table.
What were legal fees an hour back then for an associate?
For an associate?
Yeah.
My beginning rate, I think, was $55 or $60 an hour.
Oh my God.
Well,
Wouldn't that be great?
They're only paying me $500 a month.
I know. Well, you were
That was
very
great
profitable
leverage.
to have
Great
you there.
leverage at the time. Great leverage.
That's great leverage.
Of course, you pay lawyers today. It's a great
So
leverage too.
you've had a great, unbelievable career, and you've inspired a lot of people along the way. Who's inspired you, and who's helped you a little bit that maybe you want to talk about during your career?
The gentleman I just talked about, Frank Feeder, was a brilliant lawyer, as I said, and he was truly a mentor to me. He wasn't a good teacher, but he was a mentor that I could watch, and by osmosis. He said to me, prepare an indemnity agreement, and quite honestly, I didn't have a clue what he was talking about, and he whipped off. I said, what's an indemnity agreement? And he went with a bunch of words, and I said, slow down, I can't write that fast. And so I learned from him, just sort of osmotically being around him.
He put your legal trousers on.
He did such a great job with me, and I had the extraordinary opportunity of representing some of the unique clients who themselves taught you an awful lot about real estate and real estate law by default, by all the virtue of all the problems they got themselves into, or how to get themselves out of, or complicated deals. And the result was that I became a partner in the firm after 3 years. Usually it's 8 or 9 years. As I had developed an affinity and keen interest in real estate. The result was that I attracted clients across the table. Example, Sam Zell. They were the icon of American real estate.
So Sam was a client.
So Sam, I was 29, 28 years old. No, 27 years old. Sam was 28 years old. I was across the table, adverse to him.
Wow.
And my client was, I would say, less than stellar. So I was trying to protect my client, and so I asked my client to stay home the next day. And I went with Mr. Zell to clean up this deal that my client kept tripping himself into. And as a result, I picked up Sam Zell as a client across the table. And so after 3 years of practicing real estate as an associate, I told them that I was thinking of going in the real estate business. And they said,
switching from law.
Yeah, switching from law. And they said, and the partners said, no, we'll make you a partner in the firm, and da-da-da-da-da. And I became a partner in the firm very young. Usually it's 8 or 9 years in those major law firms. And I built probably the largest real estate practice in the country over a period of the next 7 years. I had, 20 lawyers working in and around me. There were other people in the office now doing real estate, senior lawyers. I was hiring lawyers out of New York, out of Dewey Ballantyne.
And building Loeb's practice here.
And the Loeb practice, by the time I retired from the firm in 1979, I was 35 years old. We had probably the largest real estate practice in the country. And we were representing banks and REITs, taking REITs public in the old days. None of them are left. We represented every major developer in town, every major syndicator, you name it.
Let's talk about young people today going into real estate.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think they need to focus on to build a career like yours, to get ahead in this area? Because it's so much more specialized today, and it's so much more competitive, I think, than it was 15 to 20 years ago.
I think where's the greatest opportunity for a young person, let's say, coming out with a UCLA Anderson with an MBA and a focus on real estate through the Ziman Center? What would I recommend to him? I would recommend to him going to work for a smaller firm, getting experience on the buy side, on the financing side, and really understanding what real estate is all about. As an alternative to going to work for a real estate development or management firm, go to work for one of the big brokerage firms, Eastdil Secured, JLL, you name it, Cushman and Wakefield,
Start as an analyst.
CBRE. Start as an analyst, but you do get a handle, you do get into it. Or go into leasing. Leasing is at the heart of all commercial and rental residential real estate. Understanding a lease just teaches you a lot about the business in and of itself. Why is this clause here? What does that mean? And once you get that experience, a third alternative for a young person is go to work for one of the big real estate banks. They have programs.
Let's shift the conversation a little bit to, you have pretty good timing, I think. And I don't know if sometimes it could be better to be lucky than smart, and sometimes to be seeing things that other people can't see. You formed Arden, you were the largest landlord in LA, and then you sold it all at the exact right time.
Let's go back. Let's go back to the 1980s.
Okay.
1984, I began buying office buildings.
Under which banner?
Pacific Financial Group.
Under Pacific, which you had formed.
In this building right here.
Okay.
As we said.
On the 9th floor.
On the 9th floor, just down the hall. And we had 930 square feet. That's where it started.
Really?
Yes. There was 2 offices and a tiny reception area and a storage room, which was where the copy machine was. And by 1989, I had 4 million square feet of office space. and I picked up the Wall Street Journal and said on the right-hand column, headline, something Prudential, something else, and something else. So I started reading this article, and this article said the Prudential Life Insurance Company, another giant life insurance company, and some bank will no longer make loans on buildings that have asbestos as fireproofing. So I called my property manager, head of property, I says, by the way, how many buildings do we own with asbestos? Now we had 4 million feet. I don't remember how many.
How many buildings? What, you don't remember?
And guess what? 40% of them had asbestos. And the Japanese didn't care about asbestos. So I said, you know what? I own the building at Doheny in Wilshire, where the restaurant was in. I can't remember.
Cape Manalini.
Cape Manalini's. And it was Gibraltar Savings and Loan headquarters. It was a sale leaseback of a couple floors they kept. And it was loaded with asbestos. It was friable. You could literally put your fist through it. So I said, really? So I put it up for sale. And sure enough, Japanese buyer comes along, and we sold it for $350 a foot. It was a great sale.
Holy moly.
Great sale. 11,000 feet of the building were in the basement with no windows even on top of it. But anyway, so then I started peeling them off and selling them, and boom, I sold the entire portfolio in about 8 or 9 months. And I went from 80-some employees in property management leasing down to 8 or 9.
So you spun the whole portfolio?
Sold it off, one by one.
One by one?
One by one. In
You
8
hired
or 9 months.
the same broker or a different broker?
No,
You did it
different
yourself?
brokers. I had buildings in Orange County. I had buildings down at the airport. And I had buildings on the west side. I had several buildings in Beverly Hills.
A broader LA, Orange County strategy.
Right. That was all. So I unloaded all that, and I owned no more office buildings. And I had 8 or 9 employees for just some other properties that I had. And
You weren't concerned that you were shrinking your platform to the point where
no.
you would be hard to get going
So I was
again?
so concerned about the economy and what I thought was coming down the road that I went into the mobile home park business. Because my theory was simple. The mobile home park business is a tough business, but it's a great business because those people, it's the last stop before homelessness. The level, the socioeconomic group that live in mobile home parks will do anything they can to maintain their tenancy. Anything. So it's a very management-intensive business. It's the worst because not a lot of uneducated people, and they're it's always you versus them in their mind, that kind of thing. But at the time, it was a great business, and I acquired many of them. The biggest one was up in San Jose. It had about 650 spaces.
Were you inspired by Sam Zell, who was in that business too? Or was he not? Maybe he wasn't even in it by then.
No, he was in it, but it didn't have anything to do with it. In fact, that 650 space up in San Jose, I sold it to Sam.
Is that right?
I sold it to Sam in 1995 or 6 or 7.
And where was that one?
What?
Where was it?
In San Jose.
In San Jose. Okay.
But most of the other ones were all around here. And as I said, it was management intense. We had about 15 parks. I don't even remember how many. But I started buying office buildings in 1992 because of all the foreclosures and the Great Recession going on. And so you're buying stuff at 30 and 40 cents on the dollar of what it last traded for, literally. And the banks didn't know what to do with this stuff, so they gave you all the financing, whether it was GE Capital, banks, or other secondary lenders or unregulated lenders.
So it sounds like you paid a lot of attention to the timing of the economy at the time and where things were headed or not headed.
Yes.
And that really led to a lot of your timing. How would you advise people today who are facing challenges like in the current market where we've had such a precipitous rise in interest rates and they're sitting behind variable rate loans that may be coming due soon or have other issues similar to that?
Well, debt is always a problem. And the holder of your debt is a very key question. Who is that holder? What are his needs? What are his capabilities in dealing with you? But right now, there's a great phrase. In 92, they were saying, stay alive till 95.
Right, I remember.
Well, now in 2023, they're saying, stay alive until 25, okay?
Forget about 24.
Well, 24 is going to be a very,
Yeah.
very telltale year.
It'll be a year of transition,
Well,
I think.
when I decided to sell Arden, I was sitting in a board meeting of the Hebrew University on the Board of Governors in Jerusalem, and it was boring. Whatever.
You must know Yossi Gal, right?
I must know. I do know Yossi Gal.
Yeah.
I've known him for a long time, but I drew an accountant's T. Why to sell Arden? And now it's a New York Stock Exchange company. We had then the stock was trading at $27, $28 a share. We own 227 office buildings of 20 million square feet, as you said earlier.
Did Arden go public as a REIT?
Yeah,
It did, okay.
in 1996.
Yeah.
1996. And this is now 2006. And I said, why to sell? Why to sell? Why not to sell?
Yeah.
Well, you know, great job, chairman of the board of a New York. If my father was alive, he'd be so proud of me. Chairman of the board of a New York Stock Exchange company, son of an immigrant. Enjoyed what I was doing. Gave me the luxury of doing lots of things, even though I had to spend 120 flights a year, going back and forth
Yeah.
and doing whatever. And then I went to the other side of the line. Why to sell? Massive overbuilding. All this craziness going on with, all the CMBS stuff and all these tranches and filleting all these notes and bags of notes and selling them off to people that didn't even understand what they were buying and the home loans they were making, the boiler rooms that were going on and all these, and interest rates I was concerned about. I was concerned about the unemployment going up, and I was concerned about generally the whole attitude and concern about office building future. The future of office buildings. And so I picked up the phone, I called Lehman Brothers, my then investment banker, met him in New York on the way back from Israel, and said, I want to sell. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I said, listen, we're $27, $28 a share for years.
Yeah.
Maybe $3 more, $3 less. I said, the companies, the raw assets are worth $40, $42 a share. And so I'm getting no respect. They don't understand our business.
So the public markets weren't valuing
They weren't valuing
the
it
true value of the real estate.
right. There was
as
a
individual
big, There was a
holdings.
big mismatch. In my mind. In my mind.
And do you think that was attributable to the way analysts looked at things or didn't look at them? Or
The analysts in those days were not as sophisticated as the analysts
Yeah.
today. A lot of the analysts had no real estate background in terms of the reality of what things really trade for. You had these giant arguments about valuation, giant arguments about rent, giant arguments about absorption, all kinds of things. So I made this whole list, called Lehman Brothers. We met in New York, want to sell. They thought I was out of my mind. And I said, listen, you guys will make a giant fee on
yeah,
this.
right, exactly.
At the time, our total market cap made us a $3.4 billion company. So I said, okay. So I went out and hired another investment banker. And I needed a fairness opinion. They came back with a fairness opinion. They thought $40, $42 a share. So I started this. We picked 12 or 13 potential buyers. And we went through a 3-time round robin, and GE Capital ended up the winner at $46.50 a share.
As a take private.
Take it private, lock, stock, and barrel.
Let's talk about the big economic question today, because the markets are challenged right now. And obviously it has to do with the precipitous rise in interest rates. Where do you think the economy is going? What do you see out there? What can you tell us?
Well, there's concern. Stock market's very happy right now.
Yeah.
I liked it. It's happy because we're all invested in the stock market. We're invested directly or indirectly. The bond market's very happy right now, especially with the high interest rates. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the impact of these high interest rates. We've got a lot of debt coming due, a lot of real estate debt coming due, a lot of other debt coming due. And when that debt matures, if it is fixed rate, it's going to be a lot different debt service than the old days when it was. Number one. Number two, values are down in various sectors. Look at an office building today. An office building today used to trade at a 4 cap, sometimes even a 3.5 capitalization rate. And now that same office building, They don't even talk about cap rates
No.
often. They talk about price per square foot, per pound.
They're afraid to talk about cap rate.
So, and vacancies are very significant. And to re-tenant these buildings today is not $20 or $30 a foot. It can be $200 a foot, $150 a foot, depending on what you have to do to attract a tenant. So interest rates have an impact on credit cards. They have an impact on the auto loans. And they have an impact on rental rates too. Because if the landlord's refinancing and his rental rates, his debt service only went from 2.5% or 3% to 7.5% or 8%, he's got to get more rent. And so there's pressure all around everywhere because of these increasing interest rates. And what does it mean? The consumer savings that came about during the pandemic, it's all gone. And we have more, if you look at the defaults on credit card loans and credit cards and car loans and car leases today, it's up significantly in the last 90 days alone. So those are great indicators. 70% of GNP is consumer goods.
Right.
If the consumer has credit not left, doesn't have cash left, what does that mean for our economy? So that's the big unknown. That's the big unknown. They talked for a long time about it. Is it going to be a hard landing? Is it going to be a soft landing? It's hard to tell where it's going to go to where it's going to land. And maybe it will skate through this. Maybe the Fed will no longer increase rates, and maybe because we've seen rates drop in real estate. We've seen them drop probably 50 basis points.
Yeah, or so, yeah.
We just closed a loan on a shopping center, and between the last week, just before we closed it, it dropped 40 basis points. So our loan was that much better. So, if the Fed gets frightened enough, there's enough defaults in areas, maybe they'll begin to lower rates.
But I think Powell's trying to take a page out of Volcker's playbook, where he doesn't want to act too quickly to lower rates for fear of having to go backwards.
Well, I just don't want to get to the level of what's called irrational exuberance, wasn't it?
What year was Rexford formed?
Rexford was formed in 2002. As I said, I called Howard Schwimmer and said, I have an idea. And he said, when we sat down to talk, he said, well, I've got a better idea. Let's only buy infill industrial real estate. And I said, it's a great idea. Why industrial? It was real simple. And this was my thinking. One, huge barriers to entry. On infill real estate, there's no more land. Therefore, you got barriers to entry, which means for anyone wanting to build industrial, they got to pay a lot of money for the land.
Did you see this inflection point with the internet age, with the need for more distribution? Did you see that as part of it, or was it too soon?
You didn't really see what the internet was going to do. It was a very small fraction at the time. At the time, it was.
So fulfillment wasn't the.
Yeah, no, it was beginning. Fulfillment was beginning, but it was a lot for the stores.
Right.
And America,
more traditional retail.
And America was always over-retailed. We're still over-retailed. It's got a...
Really?
There's way too many retail stores. Just go down Robertson Boulevard, go down Melrose, go down Beverly Boulevard and see all the vacancies there. They'll be re-tenanted, or they're going to be torn down, change of use. There's just these one store, even in Santa Monica, parts of Santa Monica.
There's this whole low-rise zoning problem in LA.
It is, but most are 3-story, and around Beverly Hills it's twice times density, 3 stories, and all of it's been downzoned down Wilshire. But you can work it and maximize your density, and now if you put more affordable units in, the laws are changing there too, which is an area I would really like to get to. Affordable housing, it's a huge issue here. But going back to Rexford, and Rexford is now. I'm the chairman and was a co-founder, but Rexford has now got 2 guys running it who have built a real acquisition, management, and leasing machine. Rexford started with 0. Our first fund was $25 million, and basically that meant we could buy $50 million of real estate with 50%.
Was it private equity?
It was friends and family.
That's how you started it?
Yeah. I went out, I picked up the phone, and I called this one, I called this one, I called this one, I called that one, and they put money in.
Huh.
So and I called my brothers. I said, it was a great opportunity, and we had, by the time we were done, on the private side, we had 5 funds, 25 million, 35 million, 50 million, 60 million, and 110 million. Those added up to 532 investors.
Okay.
Okay? There's a lot of investors. It's almost quasi-public before you're public.
Yeah.
We then rolled all that up.
So people stayed invested.
Except for some
few.
opted didn't want to go into the public format. If you were in Fund 1 and 2, you already had most of your money back already, because we sold off some buildings, refinanced, whatever. If you were in Fund 3 or 4, you got caught in the great financial crisis, and you got halved. So if you invested $100,000, it was worth 50. Then, if you were in Fund 5, it was a bonanza, because it was 2010, and if you had money, you could buy stuff, and it was just a great buying time, an unbelievable buying time. So we then rolled those funds up in 2013 into a public company called Rexford Industrial Realty, which is on the New York Stock Exchange now.
How big was the offering?
When was the offering?
How big was the offering?
The offering was only $225 million, because we had to pay off Bank of America. That was the whole thing. Bank of America was going broke. It was crazy. They weren't doing releases. We needed to.
This is
This is 2013, 2012. Bank of America stock went down to $1.
Yeah, we all forget that.
Yeah, we forget real quick.
I think it's at 28 now.
So we rolled all the partnerships up and went public. It was a terrible time to go public. We were supposed to price $17 to $19 a share, and they shoved it down our throats at $14. So if you were in Fund 3 and 4, you got these shares at 14, but you had invested 28, because you only got a half valuation, because that's all it was worth.
So you had to grow your way out of it.
Yeah, the stock hit a high of 80.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people, when they finally got their money back at 28, when they got to 28, they sold. They should have stayed.
So how much growth capital were you able to raise?
Rexford today is a $12 to $13 billion company. And that $12 to $13 billion came from appreciation of the buildings we owned, and also stock issuance. When we went public, the total enterprise value was around $425 million. So we've gone from $425 million, 32 employees, 5 million square feet, to 45 million square feet, to $13 billion of enterprise value, to 270 employees.
So when you went public and you rolled up the shareholders and everything, how much new money did you get?
We only had $225 million, which really was to pay off some of our debts.
Okay.
It was a small offering. It was a big problem for Bank of America, our lead. They kept saying it's so small, it's so small.
Right. That's what I'm wondering.
But because of my track record and my involvement with them, Arden Realty, they kind of
did it.
Yeah. And we had some novelty too. It was industrial. It was West Coast. It was, because this is the most desirable industrial market in the country. It was at the time. It was the most expensive industrial market, whether by valuations or by rents. And it was a market that every institution wanted to get into. So, and a lot of times they had no way of it. This gave them a very easy way: just buy the stock.
It's amazing how well Rex was done with Michael and Howard and yourself.
Michael and Howard have done a great job. Boy, you can't take a thing away from those guys. The two of them, as the co-CEOs, have done a great job.
Yeah, they're great guys.
And it's a company with, I think, very good morale, hard-working ethic, highly recognized in the real estate community and respected in the real estate community. And, because Rexford says, when we close, we close. And people know that. And so when a deal falls out of escrow, the first one that gets a phone call is Rexford.
First look, last look.
First look, last look.
You got to like that.
Always like the last look.
Let's switch it up a little bit, Dick. Let's talk about something that's near and dear to your heart. Let's talk about philanthropy. Let's talk a little bit about that. And let's talk about the local scene here in LA. Next, again, we're talking to the next generation of leaders, which you've been a big part of inspiring. Tell us first a little bit about your own philanthropic efforts and why this is important to you and how it relates to the next generation of leaders.
I grew up in a small town in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and everyone was thrown together. It was
How big was the town?
the greater Valley area was 35,000 people.
Okay.
It was very small. It was home of the Little League. That's all it was known for. The Little League World Series every year are in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. It starts and ends there.
Did you play baseball?
I played baseball not very long. I played football, ran track, and
That's
wrestled.
right. You played football.
So my father was always involved. Always involved. As an immigrant, he came here. His father died in the old country of typhoid, and he was successful as he earned a good living. He never was a wealthy man by any stretch of the imagination, but he earned a decent living as a working for someone in Pennsylvania, and he always took an interest in needs of the community, and that has an effect if you're around it a lot.
So he gave back while he was building his business.
Always gave back. I mean, he would bring, as an example, I'm from one of five, and my mother, we're all like 3 years apart.
I met some of your family.
Yeah.
At
So
the
I
event recently.
so we had all these kids, and there were all these other kids around, and my mother couldn't handle it all because it was just a lot going on, and my father was a lot to handle too, and so he used to get these women who were coming out of prison and like a halfway house, and they would go become the halfway house, like they're on parole, halfway houses, and my mother would hire these people and train them, and they would help take care of all the kids and everything.
Wow.
And and they came back years later being, proper citizens of their communities or whatever they were. And my father was always helping people who needed help, because at one time he needed a lot of help. When they came to this country, they had nothing. He didn't speak a word of English.
Where did they come from?
Lithuania.
Lithuania.
Was successful as a lawyer. I had a client by the name of Mike Hirsch, and he came in for a meeting one day, and he says, "I've nominated you for the board of City of Hope." He was the then chairman.
I remember that.
And I said, "You've nominated me? I don't have time for that. I got all these clients and this and that. No, you just..." And he said, I came in for another meeting a couple weeks later. He said, "Congratulations." I said, "For what?" "You've been elected to the board of directors of the City of Hope." I said, "You can't do that." I said, "Listen, I'll go take a tour, and we'll see." So I went out to the City of Hope.
Duarte, yeah.
In Duarte. Bears no resemblance to what it is today.
Yeah.
And they took me into this lab, and this research guy with a big mustache, I can still remember. He sat up on his lab. There was 2 or 3 of us there, plus some other City of Hope people, and he said, "We've got this cancer thing. 5 years. It's all over. We got it." And I said, "That's pretty impressive." I said, "Maybe I do want to be part of this organization." So I stayed on the board. And then all of a sudden, a guy named Abe Bolsky, head of Tishman Construction out here, he became the new chairman, and he appointed me head of the Beckman Research Institute. Then at City of Hope. And then all of a sudden, I was the vice chairman. And
you started the real estate. You were involved in the real estate council here as well, right?
Well, that's later. I formed
that was later.
I formed that later.
Okay.
So by 89, they came to me. 87, they came to me. Abe had a heart problem, and they came to me and wanted me to be chairman of the City of Hope.
Of the board.
Yeah, I was like 89. I was 47, 45 years old, whatever it was. And I said, "I'm too young and I don't have time. So it was okay.
You figured out how to make the time.
No, then in 89, they came to me again because it's a 2-year term. And so I said, "Okay, as long as Abe will be there with me. And then I'll have enough time." So I became chairman, and Abe was the chairman emeritus. There was only one problem. It was sad.
Oh.
Abe went to a hospital for a checkup, and he got on a treadmill. And even though he was in a hospital on a treadmill, had a heart attack and died.
Oh my God.
And it was tragedy. And so all of a sudden, I was chairman of the board of City of Hope all by myself in 1989. I was chairman for 6 years. In the interim, though, I've always been a student of the Holocaust. And the American Friends of Hebrew University had an office out here, a very active office.
Yes.
And the most active guy was a guy named Harvey Silbert, big in the entertainment, big lawyer here in town,
Harvey.
entertainment lawyer. And he kept trying to get me involved. And finally, Yehuda Bauer, how's that for a name?
Whoa.
He sent me a little note
Yeah.
or something, no emails in those days. He says, Yehuda Bauer's coming to town. Would you join at my home for cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, and a presentation by Yehuda? Well, he was like a god to me because he was the world's recognized authority on the Holocaust from Hebrew University.
Right.
So, and Hebrew University, background, 26,000 students today, 4 campuses. It's the quote-unquote Harvard of the Middle East.
Yes.
It's renowned. They claim they have more Nobel laureates in their blood than any university in the world.
I was with
So
Ambassador
anyway,
Gal, who
I
was
go
telling
up.
me
I
that
go up
today.
to Harvey's house, and Yehuda Bauer was everything that I expected. And so the next day, this little lady who was their executive director here called me, and she, in essence, put a chain around my neck and yanked me into the Hebrew University.
The Friends of Hebrew University.
And I became everything. I went on the board of governors of the university. I still am. I've got an honorary doctorate from the university probably 20 years ago. They wanted me to be chairman of the International Board of Governors in the late 90s.
Wow.
In the early whatevers, I turned them down. It's just too big a job. Too much.
So your philanthropic efforts
So from there,
cross borders.
From there, the City of Hope was the big one because it needed a lot of nurturing. It was in a lot of problems. It had anyway. It was.
But I think it was also something near and dear to you.
And then and after 1996 was my last year as chairman. In 1998, I think it was 1998, there was no real estate industries group supporting City of Hope.
Right.
So I called up Bruce Carrots, who was then CEO of
Kaufman and Broad.
Kaufman and Broad. And I said, Bruce, be an honoree. You'll be our first honoree of the Real Estate and Construction Industries Alliance for City of Hope. And
You're a very good recruiter.
so we raised.
Yeah.
So I asked him for $100,000, and I think he gave me $50,000. And I was happy.
All right.
We raised $350,000. Okay, so at last count, we've raised, I don't know, $50 million? No, more than that. We've had every real estate icon in town, as you well know, Mr. Honoree.
Oh, thank you. That one thanks to you.
Not only that, he set the record for raising money, which, of course...
All right, we'll see if it holds up. Just under $3 million.
Under 3. I was 2.7.
Yeah, I was like 2.8, 2.9.
I thought you were 3.2. Oh, no.
No, for the Federation, I was 3.3.
But now I eclipsed you.
Okay, you're going to count the audience participation.
Why not?
That was amazing. I was there.
Wasn't that something?
It was something else.
It was the energy in that room.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, we had when Michael and I started that. Originally, I was going to start it, and he started it. So philanthropically, UCLA got into my blood pretty early on in the late '90s.
Which is a little unusual because you didn't go to school.
No,
there.
I have 2 degrees from USC. As I said, I was Mr. Trojani, president of my class. I was president of my fraternity twice.
You adopted the crosstown rival.
There was a situation in law school that not just for me, there was about 15 people, and it was not handled by the law school, and it wasn't handled by the provost, and I turned to the provost after his meeting, where he in essence just kicked me out of his office. And I said to him, Dr. Franklin, I don't know where I'll be in life, but I promise you one thing, this university will never get a dime of my money or a minute of my time.
So it was a pretty serious infraction.
Well, yeah, because it wasn't just me, it was 15 guys. It had to do with a professor, but that's history. And then I started teaching small classes at UCLA, where you have, at Anderson, where you have, a dozen people. I forget what they're called. They're not called regular classes.
Extension?
No, it's part of Anderson.
Part of the Anderson curriculum.
But it's and we'd meet once a week and...
Oh, like a symposium?
Yeah, I guess, no, it was more...
A seminar?
Like a seminar.
Yeah.
Like a seminar. But it was regular...
Right, it was a regularly scheduled
right.
deal.
Then John Anderson, John Long, and Gene Rosenfeld came to me, and said they want to establish a real estate center. I said, it's a great idea. I said, Gene, why don't you've made all this money, blah, 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 blah. He says, no, I just gave $5 million for the library. And I said,
Right,
John, John, rumor has it you're worth $3 billion. This is chump change. It's around the ear. He says, and then I asked John Long, and he says, I have another plan in terms of a Chinese program. So I said, okay, and then they said how much it was, and I said, you guys out of your mind?
Really?
But we figured it out, and it's been probably my single most expensive thing ever since.
Well,
because it got, first of all, I'm not just heavily involved. The Gilbert Foundation. Let me back
let's
up.
talk about the Gilbert Foundation a bit.
Arthur Gilbert was a real estate developer. I met
Locally?
Locally,
Yeah.
mostly locally, industrial and office buildings. He built the Union Bank headquarters in Beverly Drive in Wilshire, the Union Bank headquarters in Long Beach, the Union Bank headquarters in Orange County, Oakland, and San Francisco.
Wow.
And he built industrial buildings. And he came to me in 1979 when I quit the practice, just before I quit the practice of law. He needed a new lawyer. His lawyer either died or retired. And he interviewed me. I didn't know Arthur Gilbert from a bar of soap. And he was this very good-looking, very English, very...
Suave, dynamic.
Yeah, in tennis togs.
And what?
Tennis clothes.
I see.
He never got dressed until 6 o'clock. So he passed away in 2001, and he left. He asked me in the early 90s to be a co-trustee. He was a big investor. He made a lot of money in Arden Realty, and he made a lot of money in Pacific Financial. And he
Co-trustee of his trust.
Of his trust. And I said, of the foundation, I said, fine, but it didn't involve anything while he was alive. He ran it. So I didn't really think about it. Then
How old was he at the time?
He died, he was 88 years old in 2001, just before 9/11, and at the time he was a renowned art collector, and that was already positioned over in London. The Gilbert Collection Trust is very famous at the Victoria and Albert Museum.
Because he was a British background.
British background. Yeah. And it was at LACMA, that's another story. And we started with $90-some million in cash and real estate in the foundation. Today, the foundation's assets are between $500 million and $600 million. Two guys run it. We have two trustees, just myself and a guy named Marty Blank. And we will distribute this year probably about $13 million. Our largest single recipient is UCLA.
Wow. Which area of UCLA? A general fund?
No. It's all very program oriented.
Okay.
We have Anderson programs. We have programs at the law school. We have programs at the medical school. We have programs at the healthcare system. We have programs at several programs throughout.
So highly choreographed.
And when the chancellor needs $500,000 to do something with a new initiation program, we're probably the first people he calls, and then we have a little haggling. We have joint programs between UCLA Weitzman, UCLA Hebrew University, and we have a joint program between City of Hope and the brilliant engineering school.
Caltech?
No, in Israel.
Oh, Technion.
With Technion.
Yeah.
So we've fostered those joint programs between the institutions.
Amazing how you've tied together.
Oh yeah, but with all due respect, Gene Block was a big mover in this idea too.
Sure.
Because he's the chancellor.
But you were kind of the gluten between these
Yes,
organizations.
we were the seed money. We were the seed money in these programs.
Let's talk about recent events here. We've seen this horrible tragedy that's gone on in Israel and the Middle East.
Yes.
It was on the eve of you being honored by the Jewish Federation, you and Michael Koss, for Lifetime Achievement.
Right.
It turned out to be a record-setting fundraiser. Why is the Federation so important to you, and why is it an important organization for the world?
The Federation, I've always been involved with the Federation. My dad said it starts and ends in terms of giving back to the Jewish community with the Federation. I was more active with the Federation when I was younger. I was active in the real estate division. At the time, they asked me to take I was chairman of the Hanani group, which is the six-figure donor group. I was co-chairman of the international gathering of all the federations. 1 year I was, and there was a time when I was very active, but there was enough good leadership in the federation when I had drawn from me the needs of City of Hope and the needs of the Jewish Home for the Aging, which my father put on me. He said to me just before he passed away in '94, he said, do me one favor, just take care of the old people. No one cares about the old people. Take care of the old people.
I remember sitting in Nate Nels and getting recruited by you to help out at the last minute for the Jewish Home. You're quite persuasive.
So the Federation has always been important. I've always been a huge financial supporter. I've always hustled money, so to speak, raised money for the Federation, because the Federation it gathers money, and then it takes that money and hands it out to various programs and various needs in the community. And it's not just the Jewish community, not at all. Yeah, even though it is the Jewish Federation of Greater Los Angeles, it doesn't support just, and it's just like the Jewish Home. The Jewish Home just opened at Pico and Roxbury, the Joyce Brandman Senior Care Centers. It's the first of many. There's 5 planned right now, and it's to serve the aging community that for seniors that can't avail themselves of the service.
More
it's
indigent
local,
folks.
and it's local. Yes, almost all indigent.
Obviously, we know you're an attorney by background, but what else don't we know about you that would be great to know?
That I micromanage my vacations. What I mean by that is before we leave town, if there's 14 lunches and dinners available on a trip, there are 14 reservations at particularly chosen restaurants.
So you choreograph all that?
I choreograph from the minute we leave the house until the minute we come back to the house.
Wow.
And there's a lot of flexibility, but I'm a Tommy tourist. I am Tommy tourist. I love to see things and learn things and get energized. I love walking through museums, just understanding the art of the time or the artist or the mentality. We were just in London, and there Franz Hals, who was 500 years ago, 400 years ago. But when you look at his portraits especially, and you see the people, how he caught them, and the message he was trying to deliver, it's just interesting. It's interesting.
You really enjoy the richer experiences of life.
I like to learn, because I get fearful if I'm not learning something new every day. I said I got to learn something new every day. Got to learn something new every day.
Tell us one funny mistake you've made and a lesson you learned from that.
Funny mistake? Is there such a thing as a funny mistake?
Maybe not. Maybe a humbling one.
I remember flying back on an airplane when I was a lawyer, and all of a sudden I gasped for air and I realized that I had really fucked something. Excuse me. I had really messed something up, okay? And
on an airplane.
I realized that on the airplane after the deal closed.
Oh, an omission.
An omission.
Wow, that's
big time.
Yeah.
But no one else knew it. So I didn't say a word.
Did they have phones on the planes then?
No, I didn't know. So I didn't say a word. All I did was every year on my calendar mark the date of April 22. Until finally it was 5 years. The statute of limitations ran.
Oh my God.
Okay.
God no one pulled
and
those
no one
documents
ever
out.
knew, and no one ever knew what I did.
Yeah.
Because it didn't get picked up in those 5 years. It never got picked up.
I have seen instances where a key word was left out. It's rare, but it can happen just through editing.
But but this wasn't editing. This was it was a faux pas. And when you're sitting on the airplane with your martini, because I used to drink then, your martini, and all of a sudden I got this such a pit in my stomach. I didn't know what to do, and I kept going like this. I remember I kept going like this, and I went like this. I said, okay, we can rationalize this. Everything has a half-life. And it'll be half as bad by the time it'll take this. And then another of those increments of time, and it'll be half of that half. and pretty soon it'll be this small. I kept thinking that, and it never really.
I think I figured out your secret sauce. You're an incurable optimist.
Well, I
think
hope
you
so.
find the good in everything.
Yeah, I hope so. We got a lot of challenges. Look what's going on in the Middle East. Look what's going on in Ukraine. China's a huge challenge. Iran is a huge challenge, and who knows about North Korea. Those are the international issues, and then the real issues here. We have a dysfunctioning Sacramento and a dysfunctioning Washington D.C. What does that mean? And then we have two, lack of better words, guys my age who want to be president. One of which is, need we say more? So it's like here we are in America in 2024, choosing between two old dudes, when neither of them should be candidates, and that's just life in the big city.
That's what we have.
And that's scary.
In the spirit of this podcast of building better communities, despite all those headwinds, you continue to build a better community for Los Angeles through the creation of companies, through so many local and national and international philanthropic and educational efforts. So it's been really great to have you as a guest, Dick.
It's been a pleasure. And there's always tomorrow.
There is tomorrow.
There's always tomorrow, and you hope we leave, this earth a better place than when we got here, and hopefully that'll be true.
Amen. Thank you.
My pleasure.